How do you feel when a sales clerk recognizes you and offers a friendly greeting? Or when a restaurant gives you a free dessert on your birthday? How about if your insurance agent asks about your new car when you call with a question? Our reactions to these relatively simple actions show the power of personalization. Making a customer feel special as an individual helps build rapport, boosts brand loyalty, and can even grow your bottom line. But what do customers really expect from a personalized experience? And how can you start personalizing your interactions to build rapport with customers? Personalization is beneficial for all types of businesses. And while we sometimes think of personalization as going above and beyond for just our best customers, the reality is that all customers expect personalization. The key to building rapport is making every customer feel special. That means personalization should be the norm for your business, not the exception. The concept of regularly personalizing customer experiences might seem overwhelming, but the good news is that there are ways you can streamline your efforts. Consider the following tips as you personalize your interactions. First, be human with your customers. Smiling, making eye contact, and saying hello can help your customers feel comfortable. And instead of relying on scripted answers, try to make the conversation feel natural. Next, find out what your customers want to be called and use their names. Encourage them to use your name too. This works for both face-to-face interactions and online messaging. It's a great way to establish a personal bond. Third, ask about preferences. Different customers expect different things. For example, some customers might want to get the news in the mail, while others prefer to receive updates through text messaging. Giving your customers options shows that you care about making them comfortable. This gives them more ways and more reasons to interact with you. Respond to their preferences and meet them where they are. Next, try examining your customer's background during your conversations. Did they mention that they recently moved or they have a busy schedule? Maybe they said that they're new to your business and need more guidance. Use these clues to inform your responses and suggestions. As your relationships become stronger, you can start making content personal. For example, use what you know about the customer's previous purchases to suggest helpful resources or other products they might like. You can also reward repeat customers by creating a loyalty program. Consider different ways you can recognize customers who keep coming back. There are many different ways to do this. More formal methods include using punch cards or setting up an online point system. But you could also simplify this strategy by handing out a free sample or perk when you see a familiar customer. Think about how you can reward loyalty in ways unique to your business. If possible, keep customer records like order history, contact information, and communication preferences. Use the data you collect to continue building rapport. This information can also be an excellent resource for the rest of your team. Finally, once personalization becomes the standard for your business, think about what going the extra mile might look like for you. Maybe it's writing handwritten thank you notes or sending out small holiday gifts. Consider what would surprise and delight your customers the most. Customers have come to expect personalization. What's more, the rapport that personalization can build with your customers is essential to growing your business. While it might feel daunting to use personalization regularly in your organization, remember that you have examples all around you. The next time a server recommends a meal or an online store sends you a personalized discount via email, think about how that personalization makes you feel. Then, consider how you can adapt their methods and the ones mentioned in this lesson to your own business. Personalization isn't just unique to your customers, it's also unique to your brand. Ask yourself, what makes us special, and how can we wow our customers? Once you've answered these questions, you'll be well on your way to creating personalized interactions that build rapport with customers. Have you ever felt your attention wandering while listening to a customer? Or have you ever struggled to understand what a customer was trying to tell you, even when you heard every word they said? Listening might be a basic skill, but that doesn't mean it's easy. As customer service reps know all too well, sometimes there can be a big gap between hearing and understanding. So, how do you get past the roadblocks? First, let's unpack what active listening is and why it's vital. There's a big difference between passive and active listening. Passive listening is hearing someone but not paying attention to them. The person speaking might as well be background noise. Active listening, on the other hand, is understanding someone. It's less automatic and requires your full attention. To listen actively, you'll first need to place all your focus on the speaker. That means paying attention to their words, tone, voice, and expressions. So, why bother? Why does active listening matter? For one, it flips negative experiences. When a customer realizes they have your full, undivided attention, they're more likely to lower their guard. Second, it centers your focus. Listening actively means placing all your energy on the customer, putting you in the best mindset for customer service. Third, it reveals solutions. Just like a doctor, you can't diagnose a solution until you fully understand the problem. And finally, it promotes empathy. Before you can imagine yourself in someone else's shoes, you need to understand what's going on in their head. Active listening clearly makes a difference in customer service, but some barriers can make that difficult. For example, you might feel pressured to rush through a conversation because of time, or you might get distracted. Maybe you started to fill in the blanks before a customer had finished speaking, or even struggled to understand a customer's phrasing. To get past the roadblocks, start with an active listening mindset. Here's how. First, avoid making assumptions. The more you assume, the more likely it is that bias will seep into your interactions. Clear your head, put aside what you think might happen, and treat each customer as an individual. Second, remove external distractions. Make a list of everything that calls out for your attention, such as your phone, email, or coworkers. Then, remove as many distractions as you can and practice tuning out the rest. Finally, remove internal distractions. Don't plan your response while a customer is still speaking. If you do catch your mind wandering, tell yourself, stop. If you're tired, stressed, or overwhelmed, your internal chatter will only get louder. So, take care of yourself by getting enough sleep, taking short breaks, and doing things that make you happy outside of work. Once you're in the right headspace, practice some tried and true active listening techniques. First, pay attention to the customer. Concentrate on their words, tone, and body language. And if you can, take brief notes. That will center your attention on the conversation. Second, even when you're tempted, don't interrupt. If you interrupt, you'll miss part of the customer's message. Practice patience, don't jump to conclusions, and only respond once the customer is finished speaking. You might be wondering, what if I don't understand something a customer says? If that happens, wait until the customer pauses before chiming in. Then ask a clarifying question. For example, I'm not sure I understand. Could you talk me through that one more time? Another useful strategy is to indicate you're listening with affirmative feedback. For example, you might say, I understand, I see, or uh-huh. You can also offer nonverbal feedback by sitting or standing upright, facing the customer, making eye contact, and nodding. Verify your understanding by paraphrasing a customer's message periodically. For example, you might say, So, you ordered 6 items and only received 2. Is that correct? And finally, ask follow-up questions. Customers won't always tell you everything. If you need a concise, straightforward answer, ask closed-ended questions. For example, did you already place an order? Or, if you need a detailed answer, ask an open-ended question. For example, what are you looking to purchase today? Customer service reps aren't alone in sometimes struggling with active listening. Distractions are everywhere, and customers aren't always easy to understand. But if you get in the right mindset, focus on the speaker, and follow tips like asking questions and paraphrasing, you'll find that you're not just hearing customers, you're understanding them. How do you usually greet customers? Saying hello seems easy enough, but customers don't always respond well to typical introductions. For example, when you ask a customer, "Hi, can I help you?" their automatic response is probably going to be, "No thanks, I'm fine." So, how do you get past those rote, disinterested replies to kick off a productive conversation? First, let's unwrap the benefits of a conversation starter. An effective greeting engages customers and can leave a lasting impact. How? First, a warm welcome communicates, "I care about you and your experience." That helps customers feel appreciated. Second, an engaging greeting leads to productive conversations, which results in stronger customer relationships. Also, you'll see fewer walkouts. Customers are less likely to leave if they know you're eager to help. And finally, it humanizes your company, since customers will associate your friendly service with your company's overall brand. Engage patrons with the right greeting, and you'll communicate that they're important, you care, and you'll do everything you can to make their visit productive. So, we know greetings are necessary, but how much is too much? The trick is to avoid being too pushy or too distant. You don't want to annoy customers by following them around, but you also don't want to make them feel ignored. Stay alert and stay in sight, but don't crowd people. When a customer enters your business, greet them promptly. Then, give them the space to roam. Of course, the next question is, what do I actually say when greeting a customer? Here are 5 go-to conversation starters. First, recognize regulars. When you spot a familiar face, welcome them back. Mention their name if you know it. Then, start a dialogue by asking a relevant question. For example, you might say, "Hello, we're happy to have you back. What are you looking for today?" Or, "Hi, Antonio, how are your business cards working out for you?" Another option is to ask customers what they need. Keep your questions open-ended so you get more than a yes or no answer. For example, "Hi, what brings you in today?" Or, if you'd like to get a bit more creative, start a conversation by giving customers a sincere compliment. A respectful and sincere compliment makes customers feel good about themselves and their choices. When complimenting customers, stay away from comments about their physical appearance or other potentially sensitive topics. Instead, compliment their taste and try to relate that back to your business. For example, you might say, "Wow, I love your phone case. We have some other great phone accessories if you're interested." Next, talk about the weather. It'll help you bond with customers over a shared experience. Just be sure to stay specific and positive. For example, "It's really raining out there. Feel free to stay here as long as you need to dry off." Finally, if your business is hosting a promotion or sale, mention that in your greeting. It's bound to put customers in a good mood. For example, "Welcome, we're offering a special discount today. Would you like to hear more?" No matter how you choose to start a conversation, be mindful of your delivery. This last step can make a big difference between a negative or positive first impression. So, how do you make a great first impression? First, make eye contact. don't gaze off into the distance or give customers a blank stare. Also, enunciate your words so that you're easily understood. Third, maintain a friendly disposition. Show customers you care by flashing a warm smile. Fourth, open your posture. Face customers, stand or sit upright, and don't cross your arms. Finally, use an ascending voice, ending your sentences on a high note. You'll come off as friendlier and more interested. A stellar greeting sets the stage for a winning customer experience. It tells the visitors, "I'm happy you're here, and I'm here to help." So be helpful without being pushy, and choose a unique approach that gets customers talking. Maintain a friendly, casual, and genuine disposition, and your customers will lower their guard and have a more enjoyable shopping experience. As a customer service rep, you never want to treat others with apathy. Unfortunately, that's the experience customers have all too often, and that can leave them with a pretty crummy impression overall. So, how do you avoid providing impersonal service? One of the simplest and most effective solutions is to show customers empathy. Before diving into how that's done, let's first define empathy and see why it's so useful. People often confuse empathy with sympathy, but there's a clear-cut distinction. Sympathy is acknowledging a customer's emotions without actually relating to what they're feeling. Empathy, on the other hand, is understanding a customer's experience. You imagine yourself in the customer's place so that you can better relate to their situation. A sympathetic rep says things like, "That must be frustrating." But an empathetic rep goes a step further. They say, "I can understand how frustrating this is." And that understanding helps close the gap between you and your customers. By relating to what customers feel, you open the door to several benefits. First, you fuel productive conversations. When you meet customers on their level, you create space for honest discussions. Second, empathy helps you find solutions. Put yourself in a customer's shoes, and you'll have an easier time understanding what they need. Third, the better you relate to emotions, the more likely you are to respond appropriately. Fourth, empathy lowers customer defenses. After all, it's hard to fight with someone who agrees with how you're feeling. And finally, empathy makes difficult conversations easier. Even if you're sharing bad news, you can still lend customers emotional support. Ultimately, empathy shows customers that they matter. It creates positive experiences and reminds people why they chose your brand in the first place. To empathize with your customers, you first need to understand them. One helpful strategy is to walk through the typical customer experience. Put yourself in a customer's shoes and see what it's like to make purchases, use your products or services, and navigate your store or website. And if you can't connect to a customer's experience, relate to the associated feeling. For example, if a customer feels frustrated, think about a moment when you felt frustrated. And lastly, continue to challenge your assumptions. Keep an open mind and slow down. If you assume, you'll see things from your perspective, not the customer's. Treating your customers empathetically requires understanding how they're feeling and communicating that understanding back to them. So, how do you do that? Let customers know that you're in their corner by following 6 communication steps. First, practice active listening to show customers they have your undivided attention. Remove as many distractions as possible and pay close attention to words, tone, pitch, facial expressions, and gestures. Next, if the customer is describing a negative experience, apologize. An apology communicates that you understand the gravity of the situation. Then, validate the customer's emotions. Explain that you understand how the customer feels by using empathetic language. Empathetic language often includes a personal pronoun and a descriptive word. For example, I can imagine how upsetting this must be. Let customers know that you're putting yourself in their place and you get how they're feeling. Next, share your intent to help. Show customers that you care by saying something like, "Let's see how I can fix this for you." Then, ask questions. When you have the essential details, you can imagine yourself in a customer's place and offer appropriate solutions. And finally, offer your support. If you have no solution to the problem, give emotional support and apologize with empathy. For example, you might say, "I'm sorry we couldn't solve this for you. I understand how aggravating the situation is." And if you have suggestions for the customer, maintain a gentle, emotionally supportive tone. For example, you might use phrases like, "I'd recommend," and "Have you tried?" A little empathy goes a long way in customer service. A great rep doesn't just tell customers they value their business. They show that value by putting themselves in a customer's place and communicating with empathy. Listen to your customers, aim to understand their perspective, and validate their emotions. Remember, you might not be able to solve every problem, but you can still give every customer a little support and reassurance. Imagine that you're chatting with a helpful customer service rep. They've answered all your questions, and you're talking about your favorite product features. Suddenly, the rep cuts you off and says, "So, is that all you need? I have other customers." In an instant, you go from feeling like a valued patron to fretting that you're a nuisance. The sudden shift leaves you with a negative impression of the rep and their company. An abrupt ending can turn even the best conversation sour. So, what can you do to leave your customers feeling good about themselves and their interactions with you? The first component of ending a conversation is to make sure that now really is the right time to say goodbye. Consider if one of the following points is true. First, has the customer stopped asking business-related questions? That's a sign that they don't need additional help and they're just chatting. Second, is the customer giving short, one-word answers? That's usually a signal that they're ready to wrap things up. If one of those situations applies, transition the conversation toward a courteous goodbye while still showing customers that they matter. So, how do you leave customers feeling supported? End a conversation smoothly by following a 5-step process. First, summarize what you did for the customer, or explain what you plan to do next. And if the conversation has moved off track, begin that recap by responding to the customer's last statement. For example, "Your new puppy sounds adorable. So, I've informed our supplier about the damage and ordered you a new dryer. You should receive it on Thursday." Next, if the customer is especially talkative, give them a reason you need to wrap things up. That way, they still feel valued. For example, "I wish we could keep chatting, but I've got a stack of papers that I need to get through." If you're struggling to think of a reason to wrap up, put the focus on the customer. Tell them that you don't want to take up any more of their time. After giving a reason, ask the customer if their needs were met. For example, you might say, "Does that solution work for you?" Or, if you were unable to solve a customer's problem completely, ask if you can help with anything else. For example, "Do you have any other questions that I could answer?" If the customer doesn't need anything else, express your appreciation for the interaction. Consider the impact of a simple thank you. For example, "Thanks so much for stopping by." Finally, say goodbye without cutting off communication by offering a "talk to you soon" phrase. For example, you might say, "I look forward to seeing you next time." Ending a conversation well doesn't have to be complicated, but you do need to transition gracefully. Summarize your interactions and let customers know that you have valued your time with them. Ask them if they need anything else and encourage them to get in touch in the future. When you avoid rushing customers through interactions, you can end conversations with as much care and kindness as when you started them.